for that state. That's no good. And I says, wait a minute, you got no bragging rights.
Right.
I says, you got your butt whipped last night. And he goes, we did? And I says, yes, you did. I says, you better be quiet before somebody really tells you. He says, I missed that piece of news.
I would have walked up and thanked him. Hey, man, I appreciate you losing like that so selflessly so we could make sure we got into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that works out too.
Yeah, I never give up on Izzo.
At 10 o'clock at night, who knows what they've done all day?
Right.
That's when
Yeah.
they play. So maybe they'll be awake though.
Yeah. I just hope one other player shows up, you know?
Right.
got-
That's the key.
3 players that show up pretty much every game. And every time one fourth player shows up, we win. So
That's all we need is one extra.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, are we set?
I think we're ready.
All right. Well, we might as well get the show on the road and call this meeting to order then.
Okay.
And our
Um,
is out, so
Let me see who we got here.
it's all Richard.
Yeah, right. Giesler, absent. Appicelli,
Here.
Ridsdale, absent. Judd,
Here.
Freidenberg,
Here.
Culpepper,
here.
and everyone is in a remote location due to COVID
Correct.
for now.
For now. That's a good word and way to put it. All right. Public comment. Is there anyone out there that has any public comment for the planning commission this evening? Besides my puppy dog wanting me to play.
I don't think we have anyone else on, so
Okay. Well, we can move on to approval of the minutes of February 15th, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes. Appicelli.
I second.
Appicelli and Judd, motion and second. Discussion? Roll call.
Appicelli,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes. Motion carried to approve the minutes. All righty. Item number 2, actually under a business, is open the public hearing on the Nazarene Apartments. I need a motion and a second to move forward for discussion.
I move to move forward. Public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
And a second to open the public hearing.
Appicelli,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper,
Yes. Public hearing is open on the, I guess, the 80 North Investment LLC. Nazarene Church, as most of us know it. Michael, where do you want to head this, or Paula, as far as, do you want to just go down and start, or you got, I know you got some highlights, so I guess that's the questions.
Absolutely. I'm happy to kind of take the lead there and just kind of hit on the main points.
Okay.
Obviously, you know, we did our rezoning on this property not too long ago. We're familiar with where it's located and what's existing on site. You know, we've got the single family dwelling at the northeastern portion of the site. We've got the former Church of the Nazarene northwestern portion of the site for the single family dwelling, and then the northeastern portion with the Church of the Nazarene, which is going to be remodeled to be four units for multifamily dwelling. And then I will just kind of hit on some of the big things that I saw as staff going through the plan. We talk about trash corrals being located at the southern and the western walls of the Nazarene building. We just asked that the applicant clarify what we mean by trash corrals. Just being that part of the requirements is that any outside storage of waste has to be screened. So yeah, we would want to see a little bit more information about that and see what the applicant was planning for screening. I know, Joe, you did provide an email today about, good idea of what you'd like to do there. Not sure if the planning commission has been able to see that or not, but we can talk about that in a moment. Another thing, which is the main reason we're here tonight, is the parking lot. Zoning ordinance calls out that any use that requires more than 4 parking spaces is required to have a paved parking lot, but that the planning commission may waive that in certain circumstances. The current parking lot, it's existing right now. It's gravel. It's going to be expanded. We're showing 17 parking spaces on the south, with 2 near the Grand River Road, which are existing right now. So if the planning commission did want to consider waiving that, that's something that we can talk about here tonight. Another one is exterior lighting. We're showing one existing light, which is going to be swapped out to a more what is described as a dawn to dusk security light on the rear of the Nazarene Church building. The planning commission has the ability here to ask for additional lighting if they find the security is going to be an issue. Being that there's a parking lot there, it's something worth discussing with the applicant tonight. And then another thing, last one is landscaping and buffering. So something you got to take into consideration here is that we are surrounded on all sides by single-family residential uses. We're going to have an apartment building going into that Nazarene church. So the ordinance calls out here that between a residential land use and a non-residential land use or a higher intensity residential land use, that there be some type of buffering, and that can be obscuring wall, fence, landscaping. There's some options there, but along that eastern property line, particularly, being that that's the only one that actually abuts a single family home, that's something that we as staff would want to see, is some type of buffering there. I know that there is an existing wooden privacy fence. I'm not sure how far back that extends, and I didn't see it on the site plan, but it's worth discussing just to kind of figure out what is actually going to be the plan moving forward and for the long term. So those are the big ones I saw. Always happy to chime in here and provide some additional insight as we get going with the discussion. Okay.
Did anyone see the picture of the trash containers? That's the first thing that was talked about. And I guess, Joe, you can put in, as far as I see that you've put in, that similar looking, or possibly those, you may build some like that.
Correct.
What does,
Scared of?
I guess I'm asking the other planning commission as well as you, as far as your thoughts, but what do they feel about the pictures they saw?
At first, I was hoping that I had a picture, and then I got a call today with pictures in my email. So that was nice. I got to go in there. I thought they looked nice. Oh, yeah, it's covered. That's the
Kind of goes
important
with the
thing. for me.
building too. I mean, that's trying to find something that would look good with the building. So
Right.
it's less noticeable, kind of blended in.
In our zoning ordinance, speaking of screened in, can I get a more definite answer of that? Is that basically said that it needs to be like the rest of the trash containers we have around the city with a gate and sidewalls? Michael?
Yeah, so
Okay, that's what-
I'll just read this the definition here for you. So 1204 says that outside trash disposal containers shall be screened on all sides with a fence or masonry wall and a durable gate at least as high as the container, but no less than 4 feet in height. The fence or wall shall be constructed of a material that is compatible with the architectural materials used in the development of the site. So you got some subjectivity there. We're flexible pretty much essentially, as long as it is, as long as the trash containers are screened and the planning commission feels that they would be suitable for what's actually being out there. Obviously, a commercial dumpster is going to need something different than residential containers. So take that into consideration. The only hard and fast rule that I see here is the 4 feet in height.
Yeah, it has to be 4 or higher, right?
Yep.
Well, I guess my question is can that be accomplished being up against the buildings versus setting out on the property? Because you got one wall that I guess could be used as a back wall, but I'm not sure that I quite figure if you're setting them against the building, how those big trucks are going to get in there to dump them, unless you're going to hand dump them.
Okay, I think we're looking at it from we're looking at something different here. We had discussed putting a dumpster in, but throughout the conversation, the house has already got their own, they handle their own trash.
They have a trash pickup.
Correct. So, and then actually, I don't believe I wrote it into the plan, but we were planning on doing the same thing for these guys in the house as what we're doing with the building. So if all the plans are approved, one apartment will basically be assigned to those 2 front parking spaces, and that's their parking spaces because they can't enter from the back of the building. So they'll also be in charge of their own pickup service. So one of these corrals would be placed off to the side and kind of, so the people could still pull in and park and everything. So it'll just be kind of off next to the building. And they'll be required to walk it out to the road every week. On the back side, we'll have 3 people or 3 apartments accessing the building there. That's where they're going to be parking from. And so on the back side of the building there, we would take an additional 3 corrals and have each one assigned to an apartment. And that's where they would put their containers whenever they weren't walking them out to the road for pickup. So we decided against a large dumpster because my experience with those is pretty soon everybody in town is filling the dumpsters. It attracts extra attention to the property. There's other issues with the parking lot itself. When I was originally looking at putting a dumpster in, I got a hold of Granger, and we had a long meeting about exactly what that would entail. And then we had a discussion about the parking lot and the shape of the parking lot and how these trucks had to have access to them. And they need a straightaway 45-foot minimum, and they don't want anybody backing out into the road. And so we would have to redesign the parking lot, make it a circular parking lot, or somehow set out a section so that people couldn't park there, but the dump trucks could then, once they picked up the trash, back up into this empty space that nobody parked in so that they could pull forward and get back out on the road. So the logistics of it became a nightmare. And that's when my partner spoke up and said, look, your driveway's longer than any distance that apartment building is from the road. And you take your trash out to the road every week. If this is going to be a huge problem, let's just have them take care of their own trash the same way. So that's how we actually ended at this. It was kind of out of necessity. We switched from a dumpster situation to let each person be in charge of their own and give them their own private place to do that.
Well, and if you're gonna have all of those, personal dumpsters with the pictures that we're seeing there, that is a great idea because everything's gonna be totally covered.
Correct. And that was my whole thing, is I wanted it pretty when we're done.
Yeah.
So
So do we.
I kind of fell in love with those things when I saw them. It was like, wow, that's kind of a great idea. And I didn't want to do plastic. There's a lot of cheap plastic ones out there that would still meet the intent of the law, but then we've got, plastic fades and cracks and I just didn't want to get into all that. I'd rather have a nice appearance when we're done. So that's why we went with those.
Well, how do we get around the fence screened in?
It encloses it on all four sides and the top. So the dumpster, each person's trash container is 100% enclosed in these corrals.
Yeah, it's like essentially has its own little gate and fence.
It's a box that has a gate and a lid on it.
Yeah.
The only concern I have, and it's not necessarily overwhelming, is the fact that when tenants have to take care of their trash and stuff and it gets forgotten, then it starts to accumulate and making a mess, accumulation of trash, stink, filth for everybody. And that is why I believe we have a lot of dumpsters around the city. Quite frankly, I do believe and know that what you're saying is true, that people can use a dumpster. I know that it's very congested. Some of them it's hard to get around here. I'm just trying to work and pick planning commission's brain a little bit, as well as if they see anything else on this situation that either makes it better or input from Michael. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. We've been trained in this, and so I'm kind of just making sure everybody gets a good thought here of what we're faced with and what we're doing for you if we can. So
Absolutely.
Michael, how can we, or do we, or I guess I don't understand. I know it's enclosed, but that doesn't keep them closed or keep dogs or animals out of them if they're left open. I'm trying to figure that part out.
Okay, but which ones downtown that if they're left open and stuff is around there that keeps the dogs out of there anyways?
If they're left open, then none of them will, but there's got gates on them that they're supposed to be closed and not left open.
Okay, but that's the thing that, well, you're talking about the devil's advocate here. The ones that he's proposed have the gates on the front to close also.
Well, the ordinance says they're screened in regardless of what they are. That's all I'm asking you to do is look at it and say, you're going to bypass what the ordinance says or make some alternations because it's a consideration. The container is the container, but it's not screened in.
So these corrals are not your trash container. They're the place that you put your trash container until you're ready to take it to the road.
I
Yeah.
understand
So it
that.
gets railed inside this enclosure and the enclosure gets closed when it's not in use. They even have a top on them so that people don't have to open their gates to put the trash in. The top opens, they can open up their trash container, put it in and just close the lid. And then when they want to take it out to the road, then they open the gate and carry it out there.
I understand how it works.
All right, my bad. I wasn't sure.
No, I looked at the pictures and I looked at the diagrams and I looked at the measurements and I looked at the ordinance. That's all I'm doing.
Okay.
I agree that good looks and so forth. I am a landlord myself and I know what trash is and I know when people don't take care of it, what it causes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's why I guess I'm asking these questions to other planning commission. It's not that I'm against or for. I'm just pointing out our things and we're workable. That's why Mike had said that. I'm just trying to get everything out in the open where we know we're addressing it the correct way.
Okay.
These are good questions, and as staff's perspective here, I think you could go either way. The ordinance says that the containers should be consolidated when possible to limit the number of collection sites. It's just really a question of, do we feel that this is the type of use which requires a dumpster or not? Really, I mean, do we feel that individual containers for different units are going to be suitable? And also too, think about the future. I know, right now we're talking about 4 units with a single family, but we do have 3 parcels that are rezoned for high density, and we could talk about, Joe, I know, in the future, you'd like to do some work to that existing home and maybe expand. So, we do want to think about those things and maybe setting you up in the future too, for being able to accommodate more units. Things to talk about, not trying to push anybody in a particular way. I think that either could meet the ordinance, either could, really.
And that's all I was trying to actually get to is the working part. And Actually, I think the containers look nice. It's a question of if planning commission feels that it's appropriate, just as it's been stated. But also that, I don't know if it'd be good or bad, but if we were to move forward with the acceptance on something like that in our zoning, can we put a stipulation on there that if it doesn't seem to look or work right, that we will have to push for a container?
That's what I was thinking. Or if they grow.
Right, because I'm just saying maybe there'll be the best tenants in the world and there'll never be any trash out there. But what if it starts accumulating and we gotta do something different because we can't have it a mess. That's where everybody comes around for the school and everything else.
I think it's going to
So-
be tough to say, yes, go ahead and do this now. And if there's a problem, we're going to change our mind. I think if you're talking about an expansion of a use, we're talking about more units out there, that's a totally different story because they got to get approval for, zoning approval for those additional units at that time. But, if the concern truly is, how is it going to be managed? Well, we got to deal with what happens out there. If maybe Joe wins the lottery tomorrow and sells this thing, and the next owner is not going to be as caring as he is. Those are things that the city will have to deal with, and we got to lock them in to what we feel is right. But as far as an expansion of the use, making a condition of approval that if that were to happen, now we're talking about dumpster. Absolutely, that's something the planning commission could do.
Okay, and I should have known that if they come for another site plan or whatever, things will change or circumstances on that part. And so,
Increasing
Okay.
the and the intensity of the use, it is not uncommon to ask for more things at that point. But just because there's a problem, I think it's gonna be really hard to change an approved site plan then.
So question, are we grouping it all together as an approval or are we gonna do individually things? You know what I mean? Like if we approve this or that, are we gonna put it all in one group to approve, like the paving and all that, or how are we doing this?
So at
Still
the end of the
learning.
day, a final site plan would be approved as all as one. We brought it here to the planning commission because the planning commission is required to say yes or no on the waiver. So if there are things that we feel like tonight that, okay, we want additional information on, we'd want to see some more things, but we feel that staff is capable of handling that, you're welcome to, provide an approval with the condition that X, Y, and Z is addressed before final zoning is given. So you can do the overall site plan, I guess, if you'd like to. But if you want to piecemeal it, we can work with that too.
I would like to individually.
Go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, I would like to go over things individually with Richard and Tony and Culpepper. So I think that, just keep doing what we're doing. I was just curious.
Well, and that kind of was my thought, is if we address each one with Michael here. Quite frankly, I personally have no problem with Michael and staff looking at a lot of these things when we either approve or disapprove or say this is what we'd like for them to make the final judgment. I mean, we can give them that opportunity. Such as the trash containers. I'm open. I'm concerned about tenants taking care of their own trash, but actually I would, between staff, if it was something the rest of planning commission felt that it might be adequate, I could see where we might move forward with that, but that's an agreement that I guess planning commission has to feel to move forward to the other ones too, because as Michael has said, either you're going to possibly move forward with on some or none type of deal and table it for another meeting or whatever till more things are clear. So what's everyone else feeling on the trash cans? Let's do it the way that you were just speaking, Dina, and I mean the containers. Is everyone feel appropriate with those at this point in time as they're presented for the way that the apartments are going to be set up?
I think I know the people are going to be in just the front, but I think all the trash could still go in back. I mean, any apartment complex, you can go anywhere. but just keep it all together in one section, but in the containers that you're showing us. I mean, as long as they're being taken care of and being
Or
clean and-
would
and
you
then
say as long as
um,
they're similar to or like those, because they did propose that they may build them?
yeah, they could be similar, like, yeah,
Okay.
and then if they expand, I say we, bring it back up and do it that way. That's
when
my
they-
thought.
If they put the permit in for a site plan change, then we would have that opportunity to do something like that, and we could evaluate where we've been too.
Well,
Richard?
absolutely,
Tony?
because at that point, well, like I agree with the trash container thing, like Dina just said, and you said, Mike, with the, either looking like or as is because they want to build them themselves. It's just at the time, if they try to put in for more housing or anything like that, then yes, at that point we would go more than likely with a larger dumpster anyways, because you're going to have more people there to start with, and they're going to have to do some expanding out back. And at that point, they can reevaluate their parking area and make it so there is an area for them to pull into and do a bigger dumpster area.
Right.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what was presented. I mean,
Okay.
there's
you
four
guys-
units.
Are you guys comfortable with all of them being in back, or are you good with them being split? Because he's saying put 3 in back and 1 like on the side in the front.
Can I comment on that real
Yes.
quick? Okay,
Please.
because I don't want to jump in because I know you guys are
Yes.
talking, so I don't know when I can talk and when I can't talk. The only reason that I was putting it in front is because for that front lower apartment, they'll have no access to the back of the building. So they'll be coming in and out, they'll be hauling all their groceries, their food, their trash, everything will come from the front of the building. None of the other apartments will do that, and their parking will be in the front of the building. So, and this is where I fear more of where a tenant won't take care of his trash. If I make that tenant, the only reason they have to go behind the building is to haul their trash out every day, and then to remember on Monday or night to go back there and haul it to the road on Tuesday, I'm probably gonna have a problem with that tenant taking care of his trash. But if I put it right there where he or she's doing all of her living anyway, it's 10 steps from the road, but it's nicely hidden from the road until it's time to take it out there, then that tenant's probably gonna take care of their trash for me and not become a problem. So I just want to interject that that's why that was set up that way, because they really don't have any business in the back of the building. at
Joe,
all.
are you talking about the corral for the ones up front being right next to the building?
Not in
now?
the front of the building, and I put it in the drawing.
I'm sorry, I haven't been able to pull up the drawing. I got the other
Oh,
pictures
okay.
and stuff myself, but
So
I haven't been able to see the actual drawing myself. For some reason, it wouldn't pull it up for me.
Okay, on the drawing, so if you're standing in front of the church on Grand River facing it,
Uh-huh.
the parking spots would be to your right between that and the pastor's house there, right? So
Mhm.
against the west side of the church, set back just a little bit off of the corner,
Okay,
is where that corral would sit. So you only see the side of that corral.
gotcha.
It's really
So
not
it would
out
be-
front.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Not out in
It
front of
would
the
be
building,
more or
no.
less between, it'd be more or less between the
house and
church and the house itself,
Correct. And I
right
put it
next
on
to
the,
it.
exactly. And I put it on the church side
Uh-huh.
because it's their trash. and I
Right.
don't want it up against the other house. The other house, I'm planning on just putting another one. There's already a cement pad on the west side of the house there. And right now, all their trash is sitting right out in front of the house, and I drove by and I didn't like it. So we put in the plan that we're gonna also put one of the corrals on the west side of the house on the cement, so that that's enclosed and taken care of other than on trash day as well.
Now, the question, you were talking to Granger. Did you talk to them about possibly backing down into the driveway to pick up those dumpsters, or would they have to take them up to Grand River or out to Shiawassee Street?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
I know that you said that you were talking with Granger about the pickup.
Correct, of the
Okay.
dump. the big
So
dump.
would they back down the driveway behind the house and the church to pick up all the corrals down there and dump them? Or would they have to be taken up to Grand River or out to Shiawassee Street?
We're expecting that they would be picked up at Shiawassee Street.
Okay, okay,
So I'm not sure. I think it's actually a Wednesday pickup, but I can't remember for positive.
Okay.
But yeah, they would be walked to Shiawassee Street, not up to Grand River.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone set or pretty much logical on the container part?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. Then, Michael, what was the next thing? Buffering or parking lot?
Yes, let's see. Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, let's talk about the parking lot. The ordinance, anytime you have more than 4 parking spaces at a time, the ordinance asks that it be paved unless the planning commission specifically grants a waiver for that. That is the reason that this came to the planning commission to begin with, because that's something that staff can't just issue. So that's, I think that that's worth the discussion. Absolutely.
I don't
How many
have-
parking spaces again? Sorry.
Any more than 4 is required to be paved. So those two.
Right, but how many are they asking for?
17 in the rear, and then we have 2 near Grand River. Those 2 parking spaces near Grand River, I would not assume that the paving requirement would be applicable there.
Right.
Just the parking lot to the south of the buildings. Yes.
Michael, if you want to share your screen, you can. If you want to share the map or whatever.
Yeah, if that's gonna help people out, yeah, I've got no problem doing that. Let me.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, you need to see this plan. Give me one moment here.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I haven't been able to pull up for some reason, and I think it's just operator error. So
Oh yeah, that's.
Nah, it couldn't be that.
I'll admit it, it's operator error.
All right, is everybody seeing the site plan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm gonna move this around a little bit. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got the 2 existing buildings, got the proposed trash corral that we were talking about for the tenant that doesn't have access to the southern portion of the building. And then we've got the other trash corrals here, and then obviously our delineated parking spaces with a 22-foot wide travel lane, which that's what the ordinance calls out for for 2-way access.
Oh, and it's easier access for emergency services too.
That's right. That's right.
So basically, the planning commission needs to decide if they're gonna waive paving of the parking lot of 17 spaces to exist as it is right now, basically.
I don't personally, me. You're up next, Tony. I think we should pave it. That's in the ordinance. I think it's what we're moving for the city. We're moving towards that. I mean, I understand it's gonna be, could be a great opportunity, and why not start with nice paved parking lot?
Do you
Something
asking?
that's come up a lot in the last few properties that we've discussed, and I mean, ultimately, that's a lot of gravel that can potentially come out into the road and into the sewers.
And it's right by the school, so it's a lot, I mean, not that it's not bothering you already, but
Well, most of all of our businesses that, maybe not all, but most of all of our business are required to put them in when they put the parking lots in. You've got a store downtown that just put a brand new parking lot in. And there'll be others. I mean, there have been some that have been waived. We're talking about a pretty good sized parking lot with 17 spaces. And if we have a site plan that goes farther down the road that may come to us, which we never know, Hopefully Joe would be very successful in this and say, hey, I want to build 4 more or a room for 4 or put expansion in. Then we're still in the same boat. And I feel the same way about paving. I know it's a costly endeavor.
It is.
I've been there and I've done that. But it also pays dividends in the long run for the city as well as the tenants, as well as the property owner. How do you plow snow in that gravel drive? It don't work very good. It all gets out on the street. But that's my 2 cents worth.
I myself, Mike, have to agree with you. The paving, I do believe, especially with having that many, it needs to be done. I know how that parking lot has been over the years with that church down there, and there was plenty of times when Grandma and Grandpa were there that we always had to go down and pull vehicles out in the spring and in the fall because it was so soft and things like that.
Yep.
So, and that makes a bigger mess as it is. So I think it needs to be paved also.
Tony, have you put your 2 cents worth in?
Yeah, I agree that it needs to be paid. I think that's a
Okay.
huge,
Well, you've
Nick,
got
if
it pretty
my-
much decided that it needs to be paved. So,
Could I at least put in the reasonings why I'm asking for it?
sure, you can,
Just to get a
you're open
chance
to
here?
it.
Okay. There's a lot of reasons that I asked for it to stay gravel. Now, I understand that if we expand here, then that changes everything. But first, let me just explain why I asked for what I asked for here. Excuse me. In the drawing there, you'll see there are 17 parking spaces back there. In order to do this project, my understanding is we only need 10 spaces. We've got 2 up in front, and then we need 8 out and back, and that's the end of it. So I could have designed this with just 8 spaces, but I had a few things in mind, and I'm going to be completely honest with you up front here. Every project I do, I don't just think about me. I don't just think about us. I think about the whole community, how it's going to affect everybody. And I think I've even proven that. The first one that we did out there was my nephew's house next to the park. And he didn't understand why I didn't just build a house on that lot next to the park. But when I looked at it, I thought that would be stealing from the city and from the people of the city, because that just naturally should go in with the park. So we gave it to the city and forwent some money on that lot, or potentially a lot if I'd have just put a house on it, because it was better for the city and better for the people around. So as I go through this, just keep in mind, I'm not doing this just because I have to or want to. There's a bunch of reasonings behind it. So what it comes down to for us is this. I was looking at it as a cost versus benefits versus liabilities. So when we went to rezone this for higher density, one of the main concerns that I kept hearing was, are people going to be parking on the streets? Is this going to put more wear and tear on, the city and the people around the building? So my thought was, with the parking lot approximately the size it is, I could put a lot more parking back there so that if somebody decides to have a family reunion, people over for Christmas, whatever, there's no need for anybody to be parking out on the streets because there's ample parking back there. So that was one. The second issue was, based on the footprint that's already there and the size of the lot, if I pave this, I'm taking up 1/5 of the landscape with blacktop. So that blacktop is not permeable. So you're going to change the direction of all the water. You're going to impact the water absorption rates on the property. You've got, sorry, I'm trying to read my notes here. And then, so again, we're looking at environmental impacts that are going to affect it. We looked at how is the system working right now. And granted, I know that they did have some mud problems back there, but we added like 4 extra inches of gravel over the gravel that existed. And it has been rock solid all winter long. We've had 0 issues. And also it's on a downhill slant from the road. So all that gravel is literally quarantined right down in that area. There's, unless somebody purposely went and pushed it out there, it couldn't make it up to the road. And there's ample area around the lot where they should never be pushing it towards the road because, you know, obviously you're pushing it towards your neighbors or whatever, when we've got all the acreage in the back to push it and let it melt. Honestly, another issue was cost. With this particular building already existing and having to meet the current codes for putting a 4-unit inside this building, we have to put a sprinkler system in. I wouldn't have an issue with the sprinkler system for that size building because it should only be $8,000 or $9,000 to put that system in. But Langsburg doesn't have city water. So in order to put a sprinkler system in there now, we're talking, and I had to talk Duluth down in Lansing, I got them down to $25,000 just for the sprinkler system. So when we combine that with all the other costs of renovating this building into a 4-unit, we're now meeting and on the verge of exceeding what the finished value of the building will be. We've got roughly $80,000 into the building right now. We've got roughly another $150,000 to $180,000 to put into this project to put that building into a 4-unit building. And based on all the analysis they've run, that building is going to be worth, when it's finished, about $280,000 to $320,000. Well, we're already right there at the basic value of the building. So this will put us beyond viability to do the project if we have to pave that large of a space. We're going to be changing the way that the property's already set up and established itself to work over the last several decades. And we're doing it all for 4 units. If it were 12 units, absolutely, I know it has to be done. And we'll just fix all that and we'll deal with it. But for 4 units, I mean, I almost call it a hardship case because now we're pushing it to where you couldn't viably do the project with those kind of costs involved. And for just 4 units and trying, you know, to address the needs of the neighborhood as well as our own, we just felt that this was reasonable to ask at this time to allow us to just maintain it as gravel. And then on any future expansion, absolutely, then we'll have to pave it and bring it up to current standards. So that was our thinking in this whole project and why we were coming to you to request that we could do it as gravel, because it really does make or break the project.
I have 2 questions.
Okay, ask me anything. I mean,
I have one for you and then one for Michael.
okay.
Is it a possibility for you to, I mean, for the sake of complying with us or the planning commission and still wanting to cut down cost, is it possible to like cut it in half and have just 8 spots on the side of the, like where the building is? Do you know what I mean? Like where like the walk is, and then have those spots. So then you just have 8 spots. I think you can fit 8 in there. I don't know exactly. I'm just looking at the picture, but wouldn't that be a plausible thing to do? And then, I mean, and then you could expand if you expand buildings.
Well, if I cut that, so basically, there's only 7 across there because he had also noted that I have to have access compliance, and that's why you'll see the one walkway crossed out. I forgot to indicate that on the map, but when I was working with Smith Engineering, he had told me that's going to have to be a accessible spot there. So we just not mark that whole one out so that because I think they have to be 16 feet wide. Or roughly, and we knew that those 2 spots would equal out to an accessible parking spot for them. So, but even so, if we knocked out just the parking on the opposite side, you're only taking off 19 feet of pavement there because I still have to maintain a 22-foot roadway plus my 20-foot roughly parking spots with my extra overhang. So it reduces the cost a little bit, but it doesn't reduce it
Right.
It doesn't significantly reduce it to knock off just that part of the parking lot and then pave the whole thing.
And
Which-
then
Go ahead.
for Michael, I'm wondering, Daily, if, okay, say that we say you have to pave it, is there a time limit? I'm not sure about that, that it has to be done if we are asking for it.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Typically,
Sorry.
if it's a part of the approved site plan, you expect that to be done by the time occupancy is granted. So by the time all of your final, by the time that you're moving people in there and tenants are allowed to actually, take possession, it should be done at that point.
Got it.
Do we fight with people all the time about issues on site plans that don't get done? Yes,
Yeah.
we do. But yeah, I generally speaking, from staff, you like to have all your zoning requirements met before you give final occupancy, because that is kind of your tool to say,
Yeah.
hey, we approved you based on this, and you're not doing that. So when you issue that final occupancy, you're kind of out the door at that point, unless you're able to. It's just a lot tougher to get people to comply with those conditions after the fact, and that's why, generally speaking, when I'm talking with the building official, he's asking me before he's given final occupancy to places, has zoning been met? Because that's the time for me to hit him with it.
Got it.
So what, let's say hypothetically, we approve the gravel lot. What then gives us recourse on an expansion to say, okay, well, now you have to pave this lot as part of this expansion when it's already been approved and existing?
That kind of is the point, I think, is the fact that once you make the decision, unless there's a different site plan brought for additions as far as building and so forth, you will have what you have, what you approve.
Well, and I guess but that is what I'm asking. If
Can't expand unless you approve the new expansion, so I couldn't expand and not do that parking lot if that's what you required, I think is the answer to that.
I guess I'm not sure, because if we're approving this large gravel parking lot, and then you go to expand with building, I mean, that parking lot is still existing. I mean, I guess that's what is the planning commission able to then say, now you have to pave this parking lot with building new buildings?
Right, he would bring the same type of stuff to us again with a new
Okay.
building plan, and then it probably would change everything, in my opinion. Possibly your dumpsters, your parking lot, everything would have to be reconfigured and done. And I believe that's what Michael is saying is if you'll go ahead and approve it, which that's by whatever, the way it stands, is unless there is a change in the site plan as far as down the road to build something newer or bigger and better and so forth, you will have a gravel parking lot.
And I'm not saying that this is going to be the case with this development at all, but I can just say from personal experience, when gravel has been allowed, it is very difficult when you're talking about an expansion of a use to say now you have to pave. We're actually dealing with that with the A1 mini storage site. They were approved for their first mini storage back in the early 2000s. There was no paving requirement back then. New zoning ordinance gets adopted. Over 10 years after the fact, they put up a new building. Now paving is required. We are still fighting with them over a year now to get them to pave.
See, and our thought was that we had hoped to expand on there in the future, but we already knew that we would have to pave at that point, that we'd have to bring in dumpsters. This was us trying to get it up off of the ground so that we can get it up and running, get it paying for itself, so that we could potentially expand in the future. knowing that we would, and I don't want to run a 12 unit area off of gravel. That's just unsustainable. This is just simply, we're just trying to get the 4 units off the ground, and it's an extreme cost based on just those 4 units. They don't fund that kind of they won't fund the project with just 4 units and needing to put that much money between the existing building issues to bring that up to code. If it was a new building, it would be much easier, right? Because then it's all built into the new building. It isn't as expensive as to refurbish this building, because we've got slanted floors. It was a church. So now we have to bring up, so all I'm saying is that the site itself is so unique that it makes it difficult to use this part of the property inexpensively. So we were trying to develop a plan so that it would provide more rental spaces. It would still be worth the money we paid to do the project. It would still sustain itself, so it's worth doing the project, and would allow us to be able to potentially grow in the future, knowing we have to do that. So even if you wrote it into the approval that any future expansion requires paving, so that then they can't come and argue with you because you already wrote it in. This is the limit of it. Any change in this automatically requires, and I thought that's what it said anyway, when I read this and I asked for this. It said, and I had to write that letter about exactly how it was going to be used, because any change in use automatically keyed, if I read that right, Michael, it automatically keyed that I had to pave the parking lot. It what's the word? It banished or whatever the variance that you were giving me if we changed the use of the parking lot at all, how it was used or what it was used for. So any change on the property would fall under that category, correct? If it's not simply for those units stated the way it was on the sheet that I provided.
I see what you're saying. I mean, you're changing the use of the building, and it prompts a review of the parking as well, right?
Yes. Well, I thought it said automatically requires us to go back to paving if we made any changes other than what we put on the gravel parking area use description.
So, yeah, I mean, the change in use, it's happening right now with the conversion of the church. So that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, but I meant that,
an expansion of that use, additional units, it prompt additional site plan review. It could be caught later on. We could, it's something that could be addressed later on too. Could be a condition of approval tonight, as if a waiver was granted. So there's more than one way to get to the same end goal. It's truly just, it's a preference thing when it comes down to the planning commission. What do we feel is right here? Obviously, Joe, you put forward your reasoning for it. So at this point, it's truly, planning commission. What do we feel is right here? You can absolutely tack a condition of approval onto this, that if more units are added, it'd be paved, and that gravel is given now. It's I mean, there's a lot of talk at the beginning too about just the necessity of new sites being paved. So this is where it gets really subjective, and this is why we bring it to the planning commission to begin with, because I sure as heck don't want to have to be the guy to make that call at the end of the day. I'm here to give you information and talk to you about other sites that or could be that are somewhat comparable, and provide any kind of insight as needed. So with that, discuss away.
Well, planning commission, basically the question I have for anyone, and that's the whole part of the comment part, is with what Mr. Palazzo has stated on the reasoning, whom has anything to say about the reasonings, or I guess has feelings that it's justified reasons, or are you still standing on the paved? Because we still got other issues too.
I will I'll start. I have no thoughts that you are like, out for your own. Like I'm sure that you're putting your heart into it and you're thinking about the city and you want to do what's right. And that's what we all want, obviously. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. So pulling a little bit here, but at the same time, I have to go back to what the ordinances say. And I understand, like, as much as like me personally, if you were to come to me and ask me, I would, yeah, it's fine. But as a planning commission and it being in the ordinances, I really honestly think that it should be paved. So then future builds will also be paved. And as much as I don't want it to affect you or to stop what you're doing, because I think it's an awesome idea. But I really do think that it should be paved. That's me. And if you could shrink it to 8, and I know that it's still a lot of space, but I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Richard, Tony, either one of you,
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here, because I also believe that it should be paved. The flip side of this whole thing is that I think all of us would like to see something done with this site. And, I'd hate to stand in the way of progress. Nitpicking about the parking lot. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm
I'd
too.
really like to see it paved, but I also want to see this project move forward.
well, and I believe as far as my input, the city can use the housing, it needs the housing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in my opinion, I feel the same way about parking. We're getting into a situation where a lot of people want us to waive the parking requirements, and in some cases we have. And I'm already dreading that thought already, that we've already done something. And I'm sure somebody sitting on this commission can shake their head to that too. But the bottom line of it is it is our ordinance, and I don't want it to go under either. But I also know that I have rental properties and I have to put money into them to keep them going and to start them. And I have to buy them in order to do it, and do the same thing that Mr. Palazzo is doing. And I also know I had the planning commission before I was ever involved in the city hold me up on a project for planning for 3 years. So at that note, I still feel strongly about the paving.
Me too.
Mike, I definitely agree with you and Dina, and Tony. Yes, I really want something to be done with that property. And what he's proposing is a wonderful thing, because we can always use more housing in the city. There's no buts, if, ands, or buts about that. But that driveway with the ordinance, the way that it is, as large as it is, it has to follow the ordinance rules, and it needs to be paved, just like we had the bigger parking lot with the business downtown. It has to be done.
Okay, well, you have 4 people speaking on that as far as the planning. Now you've said that. What else is there, Michael? The buffering?
Yeah, just moving on here. I'm just gonna keep moving through the report. Lighting was the other one. We've
Okay,
got,
yeah.
we show an existing exterior light kind of near where the parking area is. And Joe, you can jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong. There seems to be maybe another light next to the rear entrance on the building as well, or was that?
Yeah, just right where you see it says entry in front of the parking lot where it says walk.
Right here.
Yeah, up against the building, there's one there as well.
Okay.
The reason that I didn't put any extra lighting in here was because at this point with the existing light, it's not a shielded light, but it does okay. So they have different types of lighting. Okay. So if you, one type of lighting, the bulb never sits below the underside of the casing it's in. The other one does sit below that. So the one that never goes below it is called shielded. It won't throw the light as much down as the one that sits below it so that the light can get out. Right now with the light that's there, just upgrading that to a similar light, it does throw considerable light back there. The whole neighborhood is used to that exact amount of light right now. It appears that the light would reach the edges of the parking lot sufficiently so that it was safe for people coming in and out. My thought was, once the parking lot is in, if we feel there's any issues with lighting, then absolutely we would add additional lighting. But I was trying to watch for light pollution, because you do have a house right across the street, and additional light would probably push in his direction. Right now, we're not shining in anybody's windows.
That's
So-
something you really got to take into consideration here with all these other homes in the area. I'm kind of, I'm not entirely sure. This house sits probably, the house to the east, it sits pretty close to Grand River. I'm not sure how much they'd be affected by it, but that is
It's not
something
down
I
at
was
all,
wondering,
really.
you know, how much that, how much lighting, with the lighting that's out there right now, how good it, is it pretty visible back there at night?
It seems to be. It seems, I mean, how the people who park at the house, they park both sides of that driveway, and they seem to, I can see their vehicles fine and all that.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not at all against adding additional light out in the parking lot. I just didn't want to try and predict what's perfect when, I want it safe too, obviously. If I'm the landowner, I don't want any issues with safety. So I just didn't want to overlight the area beyond what I had absolutely had to, until I could see, is this safe? Is it going to work out? If not, great. We run a line, we put up one more pole, we try and get it so it's shielded and only facing the parking lot. Because we can always shield the backside towards the neighbors' houses over on Shiawassee. There's lights out there where none of it'll go that way. I can just blow it back towards the parking lot. But again, I just didn't want to speculate and overlight it so that now we really were trying to leave our footprint almost identical to what it was. So we're not disrupting anything that everybody's already used to.
And I would think that the lighting that you have right now, and this is just me talking, that if you're feeling that it's sufficient at this moment and safe, that maybe as a planning commission, we could approve the lighting as it is with after the parking lot, if you can proceed with this, after the parking lot is developed and you have a layout, we can evaluate the lights to see between you and the staff or city to, if there is something needed, and even possibly the police chief for security, if whatever's needed, to add that light if you need to, or whatever.
That's fine.
The
with
big
me.
thing, like you say, is the neighbors, in my opinion, because if they have to look over there and see a blaring light every night, if they're used to what they got, they're not going to complain too much about what they
That's
got. But if you
exactly what
change
I
it,
thought.
no matter if it's less, they're going to say, well, you messed the light up.
Yep, that's the truth. And
So that's kind of my position is that's something that's very easy in my mind to work, as long as you're willing to work with that as well. And as long as Michael and them can tell us that, yeah, that's something we can do, and leave an open door policy for you to continue with your project and not throw that on you right now. But I'm just one person right now, so there's others here to talk.
I went back there today and I was looking at the light situation, and it has one of the old school street lamps back there. It looks sufficient. I didn't see it at night, but I'm assuming with what I saw, it
Pretty bright back there.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how bright it is, but I saw the lights back there and I was like, I'm sure when they're lit up, it's fine.
So
So
I was there today too, and it's because it wasn't dark, you couldn't see the light for sure. But yeah, I right
and it was
now
a
I don't.
church, so I'm sure that they had ample light for people parking back there for church.
Yes, I mean, that's, you got to take that in consideration. And Richard knows it probably more than anybody as far as the church, because he's got.
Being there on
been with it for
Wednesday
years.
nights, Mike, absolutely. It was
Yeah.
lit up quite well for everybody to pull in and pull out with the old mercury lights that are there.
I knew you'd be able to give us that evaluation. Your family spent a lot of time up there.
Oh, absolutely.
And nothing wrong with that either. I don't want anybody to take that wrong.
Nope, not at
So,
all.
Any other thing on the lights?
Good
All right,
Philip.
Mike, I think we still got buffering to do.
That's the last one, is buffering. Biggest concern here is just proximity to other dwellings. You know, obviously you got Shiawassee Street on one edge, and then you've got the single family home on the other. Being that it's multi, you know, it's gone from single family and church use to now we've got multifamily. It's always a good idea to consider doing some type of buffering here. Ordinance is really flexible. You can do a fence, you could do landscaping, you go crazy and do a wall there. I mean, there's options, but that is one thing that, you know, we should talk about as far as so I drove by it today, and I actually saw that there's a little privacy fence just kind of extending, you know, towards the property line, and I didn't see how far back, you know, far south it goes. You know, is there, you know, how far south does that existing fence go?
Just to the building, I think.
Just to the building? Okay.
Yeah, it just forms a little corner back there and stops. And I'll be honest with you, I saw the buffering rule in there, but I did want to put a little bit of input in before you make any decisions on that. Part of this project is you don't want to hurt anybody else's land value, and you don't want to interfere with anybody's enjoyment of use. So between the house and the church building, that space to me, I mean, once I get my electrical in there, if we do go forward with this project now, once that electrical is in, for me, great, let's stick a fence up there and I never have to do anything with it again and I'm good. But for my neighbor to the east, he uses that strip of land to get back to mow his back lot. Anytime he goes back to use his back lot, that's his only way to get to his back lot from Grand River, because of the way his house and his lot is situated. So if between those two buildings, I throw anything up, he's done. He now has to get out, go around our property, come back up the upside to deal with his backyard there. And I didn't think that was right.
What if you have like staggered hedges?
Pardon me?
What if you have like staggered hedges?
Well, but again, there's only so much room to get his lawnmower and stuff.
I don't know how wide it is, so.
Yeah. So that's the reason that I didn't put anything there. The parking lot itself, we had kind of thought that if we needed buffering there because it, you know, the cars are going to be parked there so people could potentially see it. We could put some more buffering there. There's a lot of trees and shrubs there already where the parking lot's at. So, but you know, I'm not against sticking some kind of a privacy fence right up the east side of where the parking is. And then in the back of the lot, if you've looked at the contour of these lots, all the water from the lots to the east and the west of the gentleman next to me to my east, they all kind of drain into his back field there and then go out into the drain there and then it dries up. If I put a buffer fence up in there, it's going to cut sunlight out of his backyard there, and it's going to block wind out of his backyard there. So all I'm doing is slowing down the drying of his backyard. And the way his house is positioned and the neighbors down the road from him, nobody sees that part of our, you know, of the lot. And there's no development going on that part of the lot. So it's just more continued grass there. So I mean, I understand the spirit of the ordinance and agree with it absolutely. But in this particular case, I just felt it was doing more harm. Now, if you want trees planted along the back there, I planted 10,000 trees. I have no issues with sticking trees back there if that's what you want. When I was looking at the whole project, it seemed to me that other than maybe right where the parking lot is going to sit, that I wasn't benefiting anybody. And I was actually disbenefiting my neighbor by sticking these barriers up against his property. So that was my only reasoning. If you guys want fences up through there, sure, I'll slap a fence up. But
Well, my question is to
if
you,
the neighbor
sir.
wanted me to, though, I would certainly do it. If he felt, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if the neighbor wants me to put a fence up there, I'm all about it. I have no issues. But I would rather ask him if that's what he wants before I stick it up there, because I don't want him mad at me and to devalue his property because it's less valuable than anybody would buy it if they can't get to their backyard. So that's all I wanted to say. That was the thought pattern.
How
Well-
tall is the fence right now that's there?
The fence right now doesn't start until you get to the very southern corner of the church. So that doesn't interfere with him getting down the side of the church there. And that's only 5 feet tall,
Okay.
6 feet max. Just enough to block the view.
Right.
What if you, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. What if you extended off that fence, and I'm just asking, and because I understand what you're saying, you don't want a landlocking from that area. If that was the case and you expanded the fence, let's say 3-4 sections to cover the width of the parking lot and put an open gate where he could get in and out.
Well, see,
I
he
mean-
doesn't use the parking lot though. He uses, I wish I had a pointer, but do you see where it shows his drive and his garage?
Yeah,
So that strip of land between his garage and our building is the strip that he uses, and he owns like 2 feet of that, and then I own the rest. So, but he's used that ever since we bought the building. He mows right down there, goes into his backyard, mows all that, and then comes back up and parks his mower.
okay. Well, I was under the illusion that he was gonna come in on Shiawassee Street and come through the parking lot
Oh, no.
and go into the backyard. I don't know if anybody else had that, but that was mine.
Oh,
No.
yeah, I'm sorry. No, I just meant down the east side of our building is where he uses that to get back into the back of his property.
Joe, answer this question for me. Does he still have a partial privacy fence up off the back corner of his garage also
I
between the
believe-
two?
I believe there's just a little piece of fence there, yeah.
But it's not much. It's only like an 8-foot section, maybe
Correct.
16-foot, something
Yeah.
like that still. Okay.
Just enough to block the view from his, I think they did that when they put the church in, just enough to block the view without.
They did it when they actually bought that house, when those people moved in there.
Oh,
So they would have a little bit of privacy behind the place
okay.
from people being in the church. Yes.
And again, if he wants those fences up or tree lines or whatever, I have no issues with it. I just didn't want to do something like that to him. And I didn't think it would help that back acreage to take any of the sun or the wind off of it. When, that's kind of your water drainage for everybody on that block right there.
Yeah. And it can become a lake.
Yeah. So it just dissipates faster if it's open air. And since we're really not changing the view there at all, it just didn't make sense to do it just because it said to do it when it was actually hurting more than it was helping.
Mhm.
But if you want it, we'll do it,
Michael, the other question that I have for you is up there where you see his driveway next to the church and the garage area up towards Grand River.
Sure.
Would he have to actually, would the ordinance make him actually put a fence up there next to the guy's driveway anyways?
We call for, okay, so the ordinance says that there should be buffering in between these dissimilar types of uses, right?
Okay.
The planning commission has, this is like the biggest portion of subjectivity that you're gonna have on any type of site plan or special use permit is talking about landscaping and buffering. Although it says that you have to have buffering between the dissimilar uses, there's also requirements about landscaping for parking lots. There's requirements for general landscaping regulations altogether. It should be used at the planning commission's discretion. So if you feel that it's unreasonable to have buffering that extends all the way to Grand River Road, that's your call. Think about it practically. I think from my position, the most type of activity you're going to have is coming from that parking lot.
Absolutely.
And that is, I would say, at bare minimum, where we should really be trying to focus our efforts for landscaping and buffering. You do have an existing building there that's not being changed at all in its footprint. And you have an adjacent home that's always been looking at that side of the building. So take that into account too. The ordinance is flexible with you here. I mean, they want to see buffering between the two different types of land uses, but If you feel that it's going to be beneficial to the community overall not to do that, that's fine to do that too. It's fine to say that.
My recommendation would be as to where the fencing is now, down towards the south to the edge of where the new parking lot will be, is where the buffering really needs to be. But so the gentleman could still get down between the two. I don't feel that we need to do it up by Grand River, next to his driveway, towards the front of his house, or garage, I should say. But that would be my recommendation.
And especially, taking into consideration too, that structure's already, I mean,
It's a brick wall.
it's kind of non-conforming to begin with.
Right.
That we didn't build a new building on a piece of high density residential property and abide by all the setback regulations that are supposed to be there. Okay, we have an existing church building that already kind of encroaches into that side yard setback. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to convert this building into a multifamily, but you gotta take that into consideration too. You gotta look at the whole site. You're already pretty close to that side yard lot line. So, do we think it'd be aesthetically pleasing to put buffering right next to that lot line? I mean, that's for you to discuss. My recommendation would be definitely to look at the parking lot, but yeah, I mean, we're already pretty darn close to that lot line. I think, I see what you're saying there.
Seeing you have so much open property, about the only thing myself, other than what's been spoke about the fence, is I wondered about on Shiawassee, is that drive about 25 foot deep, Joe, coming in on the angle the way it is off of Shiawassee Street? How long is it to get to that parking space?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question. Could you
On the
rephrase it?
map that you have,
Yeah,
the parking lot coming off Shiawassee Street, how big,
entrance?
how much of a setback is there on the left side from the road, is there? Because it says it's 10 foot and then 15 foot on an angle.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
So I was looking at that thinking, okay, I don't want to have anything dangerous or anything that grows above the waist level that you can't see out of a car. But I wondered, there's some dwarf shrubbery or something across that face of that parking lot after the drive going down Shiawassee might not be feasible.
Are you talking about like the 30-foot stretch that's on the parking lot there?
Yeah, it'd be on the south side of the parking lot. That's a 30 foot. Yes,
Yeah.
right there.
Mhm.
I've had looked at it and goes, well, if there was a type of shrub that only grew to the waist, like a evergreen bush or something, and spaced out where they could just be trimmed off on the top or didn't grow any taller, just to kind of cover the parking lot and not inflict on any insight coming in or out, it might look real nice and appealing because it would have that. The fence part on the other part, the recommendations that they've made, I kind of know Jim a little bit. I know he does go up and down back through there. And in some cases, I think that's something that really he should be involved with, the answer in that, but I'm not in a position for restricting stuff like that at this moment. So, I mean, I'm not even requiring it, but I'm just wondering, I'm
I
not
think
too,
absolutely, you're far enough off the road where that 30-foot stretch is there, that's not going to encumber anybody's site. It's not going to hurt coming in and out of the driveway because you're already back roughly 15 feet from the road before you're cutting back that 30 feet.
and I was
So-
looking at it too for the road being plowed for salt and stuff so that they won't really be piled up with salt or anything off the road, but would
Yeah.
aesthetically look nice there. Now, that's the only thing I have. The rest of the commission, they can do whatever they want, but that's the only thing I seen that really, I know the fence has been talked and it may be very necessary. But I really think that's between you and Jim. It's
Well, and
you
that's like I
guys,
said, if he wants it there, I have no issues with it. I
right.
just didn't want to encumber his property because I had to, if there wasn't a good reason to do it. you know?
And my recommendation would be is if anybody agreed with that part of it for the fence, that if it is needed and he states he wants the fence up there, then we would
Then we put a
require
fence
you
up.
to follow that if we could. And if he's able to
You
say,
don't have
no,
to
I don't
require
want
me
it there,
to.
that's great.
Yeah.
Is that something we can do, Mike?
Just let it be up to Jim.
Um, you know, yeah, it is something you could do. The difficulty, you know, of course, is enforcement. I mean, I'm not saying that, Joe, you're going to be like this, but you definitely run into it at times where you get people saying, "Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll work with people, no problem," and you approve it with an open-ended condition, and you know, unless that property owner comes and complains to the city, how are you going to know that there's some kind of dispute between those two? And that, you know, Jim is not willing to work with Joe. It's a lot easier to say, yes, you need to do this. And, you know, this is part of the final site plan. But again, you know, it's, man, it's
Okay, well, let me reverse that.
You feel that buffering really is.
What if we require the buffering and the property owner comes to us and says they don't want it?
You could do that. You could say you could require the buffering unless a waiver is granted. Unless a waiver is granted from the from the adjacent property owner, sure.
And the one we're talking about is towards the east and no other property owners. Is that correct? Okay.
That's under my impression.
So I don't know what anybody else feels, but this is one of the last items we need to, I think, hash out before we make a decision and come out of the closed meeting or the public hearing for either moving forward, standing still or whatever. So.
Well, Mike, this is Richard, and like I was stating is that my recommendation, if we're going to put a buffer, is just do it down the side of the driveway, kind of where the trees and the other section of fencing was, starting there at the end of the church down to the edge of the driveway to the south. Leave up between the church and the garage where it is now, where he drives through, leave that alone and not require the buffering fence up there. Just do it towards the south from the southeast corner down the edge of the driveway on the east side to the south.
Oh,
All
I
the way
can't.
to the other street or just? to
No,
the end of the
no.
parking
Just down the
area?
edge of the driveway.
Okay.
The what
just
is it?
that
40
60
feet,
foot strip.
60 feet? Yeah,
60 feet.
For
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the east side of the parking lot.
right.
Yeah. It'd be the very end of the parking lot. So you're suggesting that the buffer fence go right there, leave the other property open that comes down behind to the neighbor. And I guess if there's any kind of bushes or shrubbery or whatever, if anybody else feels that way, or if they want to leave it open, I'm not that picky.
Well, I would put it up to, I would do the recommendation like we were talking about, the recommendation of the buffering there, unless the next door neighbor wanted to sign the waiver,
Okay.
like you had brought up earlier.
Well, it gives both of them some option and, but if we make it where it needs to be done, then they can present a waiver and then it can go into that way if Michael's correct telling us that. I mean, that's a decision we have to make. So is there anything else as far as buffering, fence or whatever that we need to address here? As far as bushes, trees, plants, as he said, a lot of open space down there. I know that. And there are trees in different places. But the biggest thing that I looked at is when I come around from the school, the very first thing you see is that parking lot.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter to me if it looks like there's maple trees there or whatever, just something to change the scenery could very well make it a very appealing situation. And I'm not a green thumber. I'm not a landscaper. But I know I wouldn't recommend or want any kind of bushes or trees that grown over basically waist high. For an average person, about 4.5 foot at the most, because when you sit in a car, you can't see over them. That's the only problem I had looking at it.
Well, isn't the ordinance now, when it's next to the road and things like that, it's not supposed to really exceed 30 inches?
Bingo. There's what you call a clear vision area where
Right.
a driveway intersects a street. You got to keep it below, I believe, 3 feet. if you're within that clear vision area. So, yeah, there would be an ordinance requirement that would limit the height there.
Isn't that only against the road though?
Yeah, it's
Once
be
it's
30
out,
foot back.
once we're sitting 15, 20 feet off the road,
That's
my
right.
understanding was that that buffer could be any height. It could
That's
be
right.
40-foot pine trees.
Yep.
Yeah.
As
You are
long as it
correct.
creates a buffer zone.
You
It's
draw,
minimum
you draw
4
a
foot.
line.
Or about 25-foot long driveway there. And if we set, I'm just saying, if you set back something 10 to 15 foot right in front of that parking spot that's there,
Mhm.
that's that 30-foot edge, you could add that 30 foot and you could go a few more if you wanted to, just to cover the corner. Or you could stop there. And like you say, it could be taller because it's not going to be in the line of sight for pulling
Mhm.
out in that drive. That's my biggest concern. But
To be honest with you, I'd be willing to buffer the whole parking lot if we can make it gravel, because I can afford to buffer the parking lot. I just can't afford to pave it. So, we can make it disappear so you don't even see the parking lot if that's what we want. Everything else here, I'm 100% doable on. That really, honestly, and just, I guess, is my last words on this, unless you guys have questions for me. It probably is going to change the use of this if we have to pave that and put in the sprinkler system. It takes the project over what the finished project is worth. And again, if it wasn't an existing building, that we wouldn't even be having this discussion, because I could have built the building appropriately for where it's being set. But we're probably looking at either a townhouse or a single family home there if I have to pave the parking lot. So I super appreciate you guys taking the time, to go over this with me. And I really would love to do this project. I've wanted to do this project for 30 years. I've done 70 plus renovations, all that kind of stuff. But this has always been the one I really wanted to do. And it's 7.5 miles from my house. And as far as selling it, I mean, this is a family owned business. This is supposed to be passed down to my kids. So when I say I'm looking out for the city too, I really am. I'm not a selfish person, and I want to be able to exist with everybody happily and make everybody win. And honestly, that's why I'm here today, because I'd love to find a way so we could do this. Do you have any other questions for me, guys? Anything I can?
Thank you.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you, Joe.
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Has anyone else got anything else to add? Go over everything you've covered, whatever, so we can continue to move forward with whatever your decision is. You have,
Tony, how did you feel on the buffering thing?
I like your recommendation of essentially running the buffering on the east side of the parking lot, north to south. I mean, it seems sufficient to me. I mean, it's pretty tight between those two buildings. I don't think that running anything north of the parking lot up to Grand River, it seems unnecessary to me.
anything else that we've discussed that you need clarity on, before we go out of the public hearing? No. If there's nothing else, make a motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll make the motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll second that.
Freidenberg, not Pacelli.
Paula, are you sleeping?
I'm here, just waiting. Ready
I'm
for a
just
roll
kidding.
call?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay, Epicelli,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes. Now, the ultimate question, folks. What do you want to do with the application? You want to send it forward to city council the way that you have discussed and the way Paul has taken notes, I'm sure? Or do you want to table it?
If she can word it perfectly, no, I don't, that was a lot said. How is she gonna word
Yeah, good luck. Actually,
what-
I did try to take, really good notes on everything you guys talked about, so it kind of seems to me that we had, I think, 3 things that would be your recommendations or your conditions.
Yes, it sounds like that. I mean, you're talking
Yeah,
buffering, parking, and
I mean, my understanding was you were okay with the trash containers, but you wanted the parking area paved, and then you wanted some buffering.
and the lighting was fine.
Yep, sounded like the lighting was fine, but we wanted to place some buffering on the west side of the parking lot, between the parking lot and Shiawassee, to kind of soften the look of the parking lot from Shiawassee in the school area. Is that right?
that was what my recommended, yes,
And
but
then, include some buffering on the east side unless the neighbor signs a waiver.
it sounds like that.
Now, here's a question I have. Do we need to put something in there for the landscaping that Mike was talking about on the west side of that parking spot?
I mentioned that, didn't I?
I think she did
You're
that.
talking about the fence?
No. Where you were talking about the bushes or shrubs
Oh.
in that 25 feet on the west side?
Yeah, she
right
spoke
next
of
to
that.
Shiawassee.
Yeah,
Yep,
she
I-
spoke of that.
Oh, did you? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Yep,
So-
shrubs or a buffer of some sort, placed on the west side of the parking lot between, that lot and Shiawassee.
Okay, yes.
And I guess I would say out on that, as long as we're talking it, is that that would be a staff thing as far as could be settled. We don't need to be involved with what size of tree they, or whatever it is. They know the measurements and they know what they can do, so. But that is correct. Now, the question comes to be is, do you want to table or do you want to send it to city council for recommendation to approve on your recommendations?
So,
If,
sorry, go ahead, Dina.
if we table it, what more information are we looking for? I mean, I see your recommendations here, but we've covered a lot of stuff. Do you think that we covered enough? I mean, that's just, I'm asking an opinion, I guess.
Well, I think we covered plenty.
We did, I know.
do think that, quite frankly, as much as it's probably not the time to say, but I think the training that we've taken and been given has made a big difference for us looking at this plan. Unfortunately for Joe, he might have got scrutinized a little heavy on that, but that's still where our job is. And
Right.
So that being said,
And just a procedure thing here. Typically, when things come to you as the planning commission, you're looking at a special use permit, which would need city council approval. These final site plans, typically they're approved by staff. So you wouldn't need a recommendation of council for this. This would be approval or table and asking the applicant to provide back a revised site plan with additional information with the things we talked about tonight. So you could either.
this will either be moved forward at this point or tabled,
That's right.
not to council. Okay.
Yep.
I recommend we table it, or I motion that we table it so we can get all the information, I guess, more detailed. He was so thorough and wonderful, but I would like to see more in front of me about it and maybe price details and stuff.
Well,
Quite the
and
motion.
I know it's tough, and the thing is that's what it's for us, is that, affordability of doing business and not doing business. we all get caught in that situation, but our thing is, yes, I believe he is probably community friendly.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have seen, and especially Richard, seen for the years what that area is like. And I'm not sure that if we could change it, it'd be good or worse. So I don't know. But there is a motion on the floor to table it. Is there a second? No second. The motion fails to be recognized on the floor. So is there any
Sorry,
other
Dina.
motion?
No, that's okay. Don't be sorry.
I
Well,
would
if it's-
make the motion to approve with the recommendations that we spoke of tonight.
I'll second that.
We have Dick and Tony, motion and second to approve the building site plan as all things discussed tonight. Any discussion beyond that?
No, we discussed so much.
Okay, we'll do roll call then.
All right, Epselly,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes. All right. Motion carried. I'm sure all of you'd like to move on. All right. I guess I'm in the introduce solar hearing language and schedule a public hearing. Is that correct, Miss Paula?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. I am happy to introduce this to you. Reason we're bringing this is that we've had a couple applications for roof-mounted solar arrays in town, but we have no zoning language on it. So always a good idea to have some regulations in place before a use becomes too popular. People will start pushing the limits and all that. The way that it's written out right now, this is very, very similar to what Shiawassee County, the zoning jurisdiction that covers the 14 townships, has for its language. We've been using
Okay.
the county since about 16. The difference here is that Shiawassee County requires a 40-foot setback from a property line. That's being changed to a 10-foot. And then a 10-foot from your side or rear yard lot lines, and then a front yard setback, which meets the setback of the underlying zoning district. Let's say for some reason, somebody wants to go and put a solar array on top of one of these businesses downtown here. You know, obviously there's no setback in the C1 district. Why make them have some kind of a setback for something that literally nothing else in the zoning district has? So that's where we want to be consistent with what else is, what else is in that zoning district. We've got a lot of language in here talking about commercial uses of solar. Not that I ever think that would necessarily be a viable use in Langsberg, but it is something that's written up in here. We can remove it. If that's something that we want to say, we can just outright prohibit commercial uses of solar if that's preferred. But the way that it's written is that it's only allowed within the industrial zoning district and the C2 district. Very obviously, there's no industrial park in Langsberg, and the C2 is on the outskirts of town. Like I said, I don't expect that commercial uses of solar will ever come to the city, but sometimes it is a good idea to provide for those things, to have language in place if somebody were to try and propose to do something like that. So it's where the discussion, I wanted to have discussion about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want commercial. I wouldn't. I like Little Langsberg.
But
So
you're actually
currently, the way
talking
this-
to businesses downtown, though, if they wanted to put it on their roof, it would be okay.
It would be okay. Yep.
but not like a commercial, like where there's 5 million of them.
Bingo. That's more what I was talking about. Commercial as in utility scale, something that's you're trying to produce energy for someone that's not just yourself. You're trying to.
You're
pump it
talking
back
board of
into the
water
grid.
and light size
Bingo.
solar plants,
Bingo.
It'd be
Yep.
sweet in theory, but not really at all.
right?
Yeah.
Only
Like
if
I
we all
said,
get a cutback.
Right.
I highly doubt something like that would happen if somebody were to propose to do that. There's a special use permit process that's outlined here, very in-depth decommissioning plans, bonding that would be required. But again, it's because we pulled it from our Shiawassee language. We can eliminate that entirely.
Okay. So basically, this is if I understand you correctly, this is a standard for Shiawassee County of their rules and regulations. We really don't have anything in the city except being able to be commercially used. Residence is nothing right now. Is that correct?
Yes, right now, there's no language for residential uses of solar. So what we've been doing, it's all been limited to roof mounted at this point, I believe, Paula.
And we've had 2 requests.
Yeah.
I can't remember if the first one was roof mounted or not, up on Treat Street.
Did we have?
It's not.
It's not?
No, I didn't think
No,
so.
it's behind a barn.
Okay.
That's what I thought. I didn't think that one was roof mounted.
Yep.
And maybe that's what prompted us. I think that's actually probably what prompted us to do this then, is because we were pretty much treating it as an accessory structure, like a shed.
When they asked, I was like, I have nothing. I can't look at my book and deal with this in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing
That's
to
right.
help me on it. So
This gives us a
So-
framework at least.
With them, they already have one up, is what you're saying. Somebody
we
does.
allowed it, but we don't have anything in our ordinance
Language.
to really regulate it. Is what
Okay.
That's right.
we didn't want to discourage the use, but we also want to figure out how we control it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I can tell you that array that's there, it pretty much follows all of your rules anyways with the 10 feet of the property lines and everything else. It's just behind the barn that he has there.
Got ya.
Good.
Well, I mean, I think Mike, we walked through it with them. So, I mean, they probably use these rules, but we don't have the rules to really enforce.
We have them in front of us to introduce as a public hearing, is exactly what you're telling us right now.
That's correct.
That's right.
And so on the basis and premise that we are discussing this, and we already know one's been allowed, and it's already been told to us that if you're commercial, you can do a roof mount. But we don't have language for other, then it sounds like we need to adopt this or bring this for a public hearing.
We can always change the language at that time too. If somebody reads through this and says, hey, we want to maybe look at changing this or that. I mean, it can be changed at the public hearing level too. So,
Okay.
So is
Well,
there
I
something right now you're going to change, Michael, or is it exactly the way it is?
Nope.
I would like to get rid of the main commercial area, like on the roof is different than, I don't want like whole fields full of them.
Yeah.
If we could take that out, I'm not seeing exactly where it is, sorry, I'm like looking for it, but I don't know.
Well, the one you're talking about is way up by the old soccer field park.
No, I'm talking
But
about
what she's talking about is that there's an option in there, I think that Mike was explaining, for a large commercial solar array.
and I think that should be
We
eliminated.
want to remove that is what
I
she's.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. You're talking about number 13, right, Dina?
I'm getting there.
So it's defined
Yeah.
right on page 1 as commercial SES. That's
Yeah.
the utility scale option. And then as far as placement is concerned, it says that it's only permitted by special use permit within the C2 and I zoning districts, which your C2 is going to be your store, the storage units on the outside of town, the little, the family
Dollar
dollar
store.
out there, C2. And then there's nothing that's industrial right now.
Yeah, I say get rid of the
Get rid of it.
C2 allowance.
Yep. Just limited to, yeah, okay, sounds good. We can do that.
Anything else that you see right off the hand without really dissecting it?
I mean, you
Well,
guys can read through it more closely, but what we're looking for is if you want to schedule a public hearing. If not, we can wait and schedule it another time. So,
I'd make the motion to schedule a public hearing at the next meeting.
I would second that.
We already got one out there that we might as well get it addressed before we get a lot of inquiries.
works for me.
Yep.
All right, so we need to do.
Epiceli,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes. So we'll have public hearing next meeting. Next planning commission meeting. Item number 4 is introduce a language amendment and schedule a public hearing, excuse me again.
This basically is what we talked about last month. Removing the use. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, just removal of the marijuana micro business. This is just matching city council's action earlier this month, which brought the number of licenses down to 0, but we still have enabling language in the zoning ordinance, which regulates that. So we just want to be consistent across the board. We no longer allow it as a license. Why are we providing for it in the zoning ordinance? So this would eliminate that.
And I, once again, will make a motion to introduce the language for a public hearing.
I'll second that. Yep, Chili.
Alrighty. You ready, Michael?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, Apiceli,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Freidenberg,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes. And to thank everyone in the planning commission for their motions and recommendations last month. As you see, the city council seen it very fitting that unanimously that you had pushed it down to them, and so did everybody else, and they knew that I think they knew they needed to change it to make it right. So it did pass that there will be, as you're doing right now, no growing in town. You'll have 2 retail shops, and hopefully they'll do very well. So for a business being in town. Now, I guess we're under others. Or did we vote for the schedule of public hearing for the language amendment? I guess we did, didn't we?
We did. What other?
So, Miss Paula, do you have other?
I got nothing.
You got nothing. Well, I know you got no training tonight because nobody's going to let you do it.
No, I don't think we have time tonight. We're not gonna worry about that.
Well, I think the training was very beneficial, let me tell you.
I think it clearly was. I really feel like you guys killed it tonight.
I think it dissected it very well.
I agree. I mean, you guys really, yeah, you dug into it. Every aspect that you really could. Thoroughly impressed with everybody. Great job.
Well, thank you for being our behind the scenes info guy. I appreciate you for that.
That's what we're here for.
Well, I hope the project can go forward, but I just have
Me too.
these feelings that how many more businesses are going to try to start and not do some of these things because they say they can't afford it, which I understand, but we all have to face that when we start the investment. I think we need all the housing we can get,
Yeah.
but we
Agreed.
still need to do it right.
Yeah.
So, well, if nothing else is on the table, then I think we better get off the table.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll
Epicelli.
Motion
second
to
that.
adjourn. Everybody seconded. We're disclosed and gone.
Have a good
Well,
night.
Good
Hey, have a
night.
good night,
Thank
you
you very
guys.
much.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.